You made it this far? Good. Prove it. Subscribe, like, comment something sharp, and hit that bell. We don't wait for permission.
Max awoke in the now familiar hold. For a moment, he thought everything with Valerie had been a horrible dream. The pins and needles on his arm told him otherwise. He looked around the rousing room for Keen. He found him on the other side of the crowd. Ishan was nearer to Keen, too. When his eyes circled back, they caught the spectacle facing the crowd. There were 20 birds or more in here with them, covered in some kind of plate armor and slinging some kind of weapon that was no stun baton. They lined the wall, and before them, each hog-tied by some kind of binding, floated Valerie and her 4 mutineers. Max sighed with relief. The birds had defeated her ill-planned mutiny, and they hadn't killed her. There was hope for Valerie yet, he still thought. The awakened crowd started to murmur quietly between themselves at the sight. Most had no idea what happened, other than the fight at the end of the line and getting gassed one more time. Yet Max overheard a few knowing asides about mutiny. Keen looked unusually stiff, even from this far off. Max's relief faded. He knew better than anyone about what the birds were going to do. When Max looked back at the restrained mutineers and the line of soldiers behind them, he realized what Keen was thinking. They were about to witness an execution.
Hold 23.
One of the soldiers' translators addressed the crowd. Somehow the digital voice managed to sound more gruff and battle-worn.
5 of you attempted a mutiny against the 11th Fleet. The punishment for mutiny is death.
The crowd sputtered. Max saw the fear widen in one of the mutineers' eyes. Valerie's remained glassy, placid with remorse. Bobby wriggled uncomfortably in his bindings, clearly infuriated. Max could understand a little bit of his dilemma. He had given up a mask and been knocked unconscious just to be sentenced to death without a fight.
The Admiral has elected to put these mutineers to death using a human form of punishment. It is called decimation.
Most people, Max included, looked unfamiliar with the term, but most guessed it meant some serious cruelty.
You will be divided into 5 equal groups. Each group will beat one of these mutineers to death for their disobedience.
The whole mass of people erupted in a confused outcry.
You can't be serious!
Someone called.
I won't do it!
Another shouted.
Should you refuse,
The bird overruled.
all of you will be put to death for your disobedience.
In unison, the soldiers pointed their weapons at the crowd. The humans shrunk away from them. None wanted to partake in the cruelty themselves. Even Max, who had plenty of reasons, was hesitant to inch forward. He could see Valerie stonewalling her own grief. Maybe she was grieving over her defeat, or maybe she was finally regretting the mistake she made. But she was in distress either way, and it turned Max's stomach to see her so. The bird repeated his warning. The crowd stopped moving away.
Why'd you do it?
Max heard someone mutter. He cocked his head in the quiet voice's direction. The acrobat stepped forward.
Mika, why'd you do it?
He said, desperate for an answer. The mutineer he addressed hung her head. He continued flying towards her. Max recognized her as the girl that Acrobat had once rescued from 0G. A few days ago seemed like an eternity ago in his mind, and that happy memory a mythic legend.
You know,
The Acrobat laughed sourly.
this is a hell of a way to reject a guy.
The Acrobat had reached her. Mika quietly apologized. In reply, he drove his knee into her stomach. Mika gasped in pain. The crowd watched, stunned. But the Acrobat had made the choice for them. With safety in numbers and some of their guilt laid with him, they started to march forward. They separated only to divide themselves between all 5 mutineers. Max found himself in the group facing Valerie. The rest of the people circling her recognized him in something of the lingering resentment on his face. With their hands at their sides, they all indicated he should land the first punch. Valerie looked up at her executioner.
Is it wrong of me to ask you for a favor?
Max grit his teeth. He reluctantly shook his head. She whispered something under her shaky breath, her eyes welling with tears. Max read the words off her lips. Having said her piece, she relaxed her shoulders and made peace with death. Those words he read off those pleading lips haunted Max more than any of the subsequent blows. He didn't remember when a punch to the face busted open those lips and smashed that nose. Nor did he remember all the kicks that cracked her ribs, nor the particular cruelty someone inflicted by forcibly breaking her arm. Somewhere in the dark corners of his memory, she wailed in intolerable pain during her final moments. But he chose to remember his enemy's last request, instead of the chokehold that finally squeezed out her last breath. He got up from her lifeless body and inspected his bruised knuckles. The shame of what he had done rendered him mute and listless while the soldiers dragged her body away. It was one thing to kill a bird that had dragged you from your home. It was another to kill one of your fellow captives. His head swam with more guilt than zero-G nausea while they carted her out. Valerie Wilson and her mutiny disappeared through the hatch, never to be seen again. For his part, Ishan seemed refreshed by the blood in the air. He bounced toward Max with a levity few in the guilty crowd shared.
What was that she told us?
He asked.
That she would beat us to death herself?
Ishan quickly shut up after Max didn't reply. He readily floated away when Keen asked for a private word with his remaining lieutenant.
You wanted to say something to me before she started all this,
Keen mused.
I take it you knew about the mutiny.
Max glanced at Keen for just long enough to see the exacting iciness in his glare. His cheeks flushed red with embarrassment.
I found out she was plotting it 2 days ago.
He started to explain.
But she found out I knew about it and threatened to kill me if I told you.
Is that the truth?
Keen interrogated him.
The whole truth?
I wanted to tell you, but I couldn't figure out how.
Max admitted.
I made a mistake in putting her in any kind of leadership.
Keen sighed, inspecting his own bloodied fingers. He stared Max down with reddened eyes.
I hope I didn't make the same mistake with you.
Keen floated off to the showers to wash up. Max swallowed and decided to rejoin Ishan, passing through tearful clumps of people.
How did Bobby go down?
Max asked after a terse silence.
He started crying like a little kid, begging for mercy.
Ishan practically salivated. Then he recomposed himself into something more somber with a resurfaced memory.
Now I know how my playground bullies felt.
Ishan looked over at Max and tread cautiously.
And Valerie?
She took it like a man.
Max mumbled, staring into the distance.
She asked me for something.
What?
To do it better than she did.
Fairwing could only imagine what was happening to the mutineers with Fantail in the Admiral's ear. His screen here in his quarters had no access to the rest of the ship like those in the command center. The sentry at his door was unwilling to act as his spy. All he could do was flip the view on his screen to one of the flagship's external cameras. Below the belly of the ship, the blue planet spun into the night, city lights glowing like orange stars below him. From those huddled masses of humanity, over the next 27 days, the rest of the 150 million would come aboard the fleet. Hardly 15 million were aboard now. He hoped the rest of them would be smarter than the mutineers. Smarter than himself, too, for getting kicked out of the Admiral's council. The camera caught a cloud of white particles streaming into the black of space from a vent in the ship's armor. The humans were going to need some smarts if they wanted to come back to this world alive, he feared. This isn't just a story, it's survival. Subscribe to Humanity Fudge. New chapters await.